Yanci begins to fight back. He was smart. He did not target Shen Yu'an directly, but started with Shen Group's partners. Within 3 days, two important suppliers of Shen Group simultaneously proposed to suspend cooperation on the grounds that the risk of Shen Group was too high. Immediately afterwards, rumors began to circulate on the internet that Shen Yu'an used marriage to transfer benefits to Lu Group. Some people portray Shen Yu'an as a poor man who was willing to betray himself to save the Shen family, while others describe him as a careerist who clings to Lu Chenzhou. Both statements are contradictory, but both can harm Shen Group. Shen Yu'an looked at the public opinion report with a cold expression. Gu Yanci is getting anxious. Lin Jiu sat opposite. He is not only anxious, he is also afraid that you will complete the chain of evidence. So he must first lower your credibility. Shen Yu'an nodded. The purpose of public opinion attacks is not to make everyone believe the rumors, but to make more people doubt the truth when the truth comes out. Gu Yanci understands this. When Lu Chenzhou opened the door and walked in, Shen Yu'an was having a meeting with the public relations team. He didn't interrupt, just sat and listened. Shen Yu'an looked up at him and continued, "There is no need to rush to clarify all emotional rumors. Only respond to business issues." First, Shen Group did not transfer control to Lu Group. Second, Lu Group's capital injection does not involve the transfer of benefits. Third, the reasons for the supplier's suspension of cooperation can be made public. The person in charge of public relations hesitated. Will it offend the Gu family by disclosing the sources of pressure on suppliers? Shen Yu'an smiled. I just want to offend him. The conference room went quiet for a while. Lu Chenzhou spoke in a low voice, "Do as he says." The PR team responded immediately. After the meeting, Shen Yu'an looked at Lu Chenzhou. "You are very cooperative now." Lu Chenzhou said, "You did the right thing. You weren't like this before. You used to get angry." Shen Yu'an was startled. He discovered that Lu Chenzhou was really learning. Learn not to give orders, not to make decisions for him, not to pave all the roads before letting him go. The change is slow but noticeable. Also dangerous. Because it softens the heart. Shen Yu'an looked back. The next step for Gu Yanci will be to find the media to release more information. Lu Chenzhou asked, "How are you going to counterattack?" "Let him go." "Ha?" Shen Yu'an took out a document. The shell company owned by the Gu family has transactions with Qixing Capital. What I lack now is evidence that they actively initiated this line. The more Gu Yanci wants to attack me, the more he will use his connections. Lu Chenzhou looked at the document with a faint hint of approval in his eyes. Shen Yu'an caught it and frowned. "What is that look in your eyes?" "Appreciate it." "No need. Can't take it back." Shen Yu'an. He found that Lu Chenzhou had recently become better and better at saying things in a serious tone that left people unable to respond. In the evening, the Gu family indeed released new material. An edited video is circulating online. In the video, Shen Yu'an gets into an argument with Gu Yanci on the reception terrace, and then Lu Chenzhou kisses him. The editing deliberately deleted the scene of Gu Yanci grabbing Shen Yu'an first, leaving only the scene of Shen Yu'an being silent and Lu Chenzhou approaching forcefully. The title is provocative. The young master of the Shen family is suspected to be controlled by the person in charge of Lu Group, and the truth of the marriage remains a mystery. Public opinion exploded again. Gu Yanci even posted a meaningful update. "I just hope he is safe and that he can be truly free." Shen Yu'an looked at that line of words and smiled coldly. He didn't respond immediately. Because just half an hour after the video leaked, Lin Jiu found out that the source of the video had contacted a PR company named the Gu family. At the same time, Zhou Jibai intercepted a payment flowing from Qixing Capital to the public relations company. The fish bit. Shen Yu'an was sitting in the study, raising his hand to touch the ring on his ring finger. Lu Chenzhou stood beside him. "Are you going to fight back?" Shen Yu'an raised his eyes. The cold light in his eyes was clear. "No. Let them think they have won first." Shen Yu'an was silent for a full 24 hours. In the past 24 hours, the public opinion on the internet has fermented to the extreme. Some Some say he was controlled by Lu Chenzhou, some say he surrendered, and some say Shen Group has actually fallen into the hands of Lu Group. Gu Yanci appeared in several media interviews as a gentle guardian. He did not say anything bad about Shen Yu'an, but hinted that he could not help himself. I just hope he is clear-headed and free when making choices. This sentence was cut into a short video, and the number of views skyrocketed. Lin Jiyue was so angry that he slammed the tablet on the table. He really turned shamelessness into affection. Shen Yu'an was quite calm. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Lin Jiyue looked at him. You've been talking more and more like Lu Chenzhou recently. Shen Yu'an paused his hand and looked coldly. Lin Jiyue immediately shut up. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the Gu family PR company once again pushed the topic. At the same time, Shen Group's official account released the complete surveillance footage. Not the edited version. It was the complete footage from the reception terrace. The video clearly recorded Gu Yanci stopping Shen Yu'an, grabbing his wrist, and saying the words "You are mine." Then Lu Chenzhou appears, Gu Yanci provokes, and Lu Chenzhou kisses Shen Yu'an. As soon as the complete context came out, public opinion instantly reversed. Netizens originally thought Gu Yanci was a gentle guardian, but when they saw him grabbing someone's wrist and forcibly claiming ownership, they immediately exploded. What's even more fatal is that Shen Group simultaneously released a lawyer's letter, pointing out that the account that first leaked the edited video had financial transactions with the public relations company that the Gu family cooperates with, and attached preliminary evidence. Half an hour later, Gu Group stock price began to fall. Gu Yanci's interview clip was repeatedly mocked. Real freedom let go of people's wrists first. Gu Yanci's devoted lover act collapsed way too quickly. Is this a rescue or a control attack? Shen Yu'an looked at the data and finally smiled a little. Not much, but beautifully cold. Lu Chenzhou sat next to him, his eyes falling on his face. Shen Yu'an noticed. What are you looking at? See, you are happy. I didn't. You have. Shen Yu'an was too lazy to argue with him. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Gu Yanci called. Shen Yu'an turned on hands-free. Gu Yanci's voice was no longer gentle, but filled with anger. Yu'an, do you have to do this to such an extreme degree? Shen Yu'an leaned back in his chair. Isn't this a show you arranged yourself? I just played the full version. You know I didn't mean it that way. Is your intention important? Shen Yu'an said calmly, the results are more important. Gu Yanci was silent for a moment and suddenly sneered. You've really changed. You used to hate taking things this far. That's why I lost before. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Shen Yu'an continued, Gu Yanci, I will not give you a second chance to push me down. Push you down? Gu Yanci's voice sank. What on earth are you talking about? Shen Yu'an did not answer. He hung up the phone directly. The study became quiet. Lu Chenzhou looked at him. You are testing whether he has any memory of his previous life. Shen Yu'an's body stiffened. He looked up at Lu Chenzhou. What did you say? Lu Chenzhou realized that he had let it slip. The air solidified again. Shen Yu'an stood up slowly. Lu Chenzhou, you just said, past life. Lu Chenzhou said nothing. Shen Yu'an approached him step by step, his eyes as sharp as knives. You know I'm reborn? Lu Chenzhou was silent for a long time. Guessed part of it. Shen Yu'an's heart skipped a beat. His deepest secret was revealed by Lu Chenzhou in an understatement. When? The night you refused the Gu Yanci transfer. Why? Lu Chenzhou looked at him. Because that's not the choice you would have made. Shen Yu'an sneered, you know me well? Lu Chenzhou's voice dropped. I know you from your past life. These words were like a thunderbolt, striking into Shen Yu'an's heart. He stared at Lu Chenzhou, his voice almost cold. How much else do you know? Lu Chenzhou stopped escaping. I know you died in that car accident. You know I'm late. Shen Yu'an felt as if all the sounds around him had gone far away. The light in the study was bright, but he felt like he was standing back on that rainy night again. The smell of gasoline, blood, and the pain of being trapped by the deformed body suddenly surged up from the depths of his memory. Lu Chenzhou knew. He not only guessed that Shen Yu'an had changed, nor did he just know about the car accident in his previous life. He knew he was dead. Shen Yuan's fingertips were trembling slightly, but he forced himself to steady his voice. "Are you reborn too?" Lu Chenzhou shook his head. "No." "Then how do you know?" Lu Chenzhou was silent for a moment, then raised his hand to unbutton his shirt cuffs. Shen Yu'an frowned. The next second, he saw Lu Chenzhou rolling up the cuff of his left arm. There is a long old scar on the inside of the man's forearm. The scar extends from near the wrist bone to the bottom of the elbow. Although it has faded, it can still be seen that the injury was very deep. Shen Yuan's breath stalled. In the video, Lu Chenzhou was indeed injured at the scene of a car accident in his previous life. But the car accident in this life has not happened yet, so why does he have this scar on his body? This is. I don't know either. Lu Chenzhou whispered, "I have no memory of being reborn, but this scar started to appear from that night." "What night?" "The night you came back." Shen Yu'an was stunned. Lu Chenzhou put down his sleeves and looked deeply. "I had a dream that night. In the dream, you died in the rain. I held you, and my arm was cut open by the car window fragments. When I woke up, the scar appeared." Shen Yuan's throat seemed to be blocked by something. "Just a dream?" "At first I thought it was," Lu Chenzhou said, "until I found out the time when Shen Group was about to explode, it was exactly the same as in the dream. That was why he came to the Shen family on the eve of bankruptcy. That's why he prepared a prenuptial agreement, a financial plan, and a team of lawyers. Not because he has already mastered all the situations, but because he dreamed about his past life." Shen Yu'an suddenly didn't know what to say. He always thought that rebirth was his only secret. Unexpectedly, fate left the other half's incomplete memory on Lu Chenzhou. "How much do you dream about?" "Incomplete." Lu Chenzhou said, "There are only fragments. Something happened to Shen Group. You were taken away by Gu Yanci, a car accident, a rainy night." "What else?" Lu Chenzhou lowered his eyes. "I dreamed that after you died, I would bring you back." Shen Yuan's heart suddenly hurt. He has no memory of what happened after his death in his previous life. But Lu Chenzhou remembered. "Take it to where?" "The Lu family." Lu Chenzhou's voice was very low. "I won't let the Gu family touch you, and I won't let Shen Yu'an get close. I held a funeral for you." Shen Yuan's eyes suddenly became sore. He once thought that after his death he would be thrown away like garbage in a place where no one cared about him. It turns out not to be. It turned out that someone collected his body for him, fended off those hypocritical people for him, and left the last bit of dignity for him in this world. But that person happened to be Lu Chenzhou. Shen Yu'an closed his eyes and his voice became hoarse. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "You won't believe it." "Then I will believe it now? At least now you see the scar." Shen Yu'an looked at his arm. "That scar is like a testament to fate. It proves that Lu Chenzhou is not lying, and it also proves that the death in the previous life was not really over." Shen Yu'an suddenly remembered another thing. "So you kissed me because you dreamed that I was taken away by Gu Yanci in my previous life?" Lu Chenzhou was silent. Shen Yu'an sneered, "Mr. Lu, silence at this time is equivalent to admission." Lu Chenzhou whispered, "Yes." Shen Yu'an should have been angry. But when he looked at the old scars on Lu Chenzhou's arm, his anger seemed to be cut off by something, leaving only deep fatigue. "Lu Chenzhou. Yeah. I don't want to be the Shen Yu'an in this life again. I know. So don't use your dreams to decide how I will go in this life." Lu Chenzhou looked at him and whispered for a long time, "Okay." Shen Yu'an turned and left the study. When he reached the door, he paused and did not look back. "That scar." Lu Chenzhou raised his eyes. Shen Yuan's voice was very soft. "Does it still hurt?" Lu Chenzhou was stunned. Shen Yuan walked out without waiting for an answer. After the door closed, Lu Qinzhou raised his hand to cover the old scar. In fact, it no longer hurts. But the moment Shen Yuan asked, the pain felt like he was waking up after a lifetime. Shen Yuan started reorganizing all the clues. He wrote down his past life memories, fragments of Lu Qinzhou's dream, Chao Qi's testimony, Xin Xingtang's account book, and the missing 7 minutes of surveillance on a whiteboard. The timeline is gradually becoming clearer. Before the thunderstorm of Shen Group in the previous life, Shen Chongshan realized that Shen Mingyuan was colluding with external capital and wrote to Lu Qinzhou for help. The letter was intercepted by Chao Qi and handed over to Gu Yanci. Gu Yanci cooperates with Shen Mingyuan and Qixing Capital to drive Shen Group into bankruptcy. Although Lu Qinzhou was a step late, he arrived at the scene of the car accident before Shen Yuan died. The missing 7 minutes in the middle are very likely to involve people from Lu Wenchuan. In this life, Lu Qinzhou knew part of the future in advance due to dreams and old scars, and intervened on the eve of bankruptcy to change the first node. Shen Yuan stood in front of the whiteboard and suddenly realized that the cooperation between him and Lu Qinzhou was no longer a simple contract. Their fates are tied together by the same death. This made him uneasy. It also prevents him from treating Lu Qinzhou simply as a dangerous external force as he did at the beginning. In the evening, when Lu Qinzhou came back, Shen Yuan was waiting for him in the living room. There are 2 cups of tea on the table. Lu Qinzhou stopped for a moment. Wait for me? Shen Yuan said calmly, let's talk. Lu Qinzhou sat down. Shen Yuan pushed the compiled timeline to him. Look. Lu Qinzhou lowered his head to read it, his eyes gradually darkened. Very close. Close? There's one thing you missed. Shen Yuan raised his eyes. Lu Qinzhou said, before you were taken away by Gu Yanci in your previous life, I sent someone to find you. Shen Yuan was stunned. When? The 3rd day after Shen Group went bankrupt. Shen Yuan remembered those days in his previous life very messily. When his father was hospitalized, Shen Group was in debt collection, and the media blocked the door. Gu Yanci was always by his side. At that time, he almost completely relied on Gu Yanci, and all messages from the outside world were filtered by Gu Yanci. I don't know. I know you don't know. Lu Qinzhou's voice turned cold. My people were stopped by Gu Yanci. He told them that you don't want to see me. Shen Yuan's fingertips stiffened. Gu Yanci. It's Gu Yanci again. It turns out that no one reached out to him in his previous life. It's just that every hand is blocked by Gu Yanci and Shen Mingyuan. Lu Qinzhou continued, later, you were moved to an apartment under the name of the Gu family. By the time I found out, it was already too late. Why are you looking for me? Lu Qinzhou looked at him. Because of your father's letter. Just because of the letter? Shen Yuan wanted to ask. But when he saw the look in Lu Qinzhou's eyes, he knew the answer was more than that. He suddenly smiled tiredly. So in your previous life, you were not just the last person to collect the body. Lu Qinzhou's eyes trembled. Shen Yuan whispered, you have saved me a long time ago, but I didn't know it. If I failed to save you, then I didn't save you. There is deep self-blame in this sentence. Shen Yuan was silent for a moment. Lu Qinzhou, what happened in the past life is not your fault alone. Lu Qinzhou looked at him. Shen Yuan avoided his gaze and sounded unnatural. I'm not condoning your concealment, I'm just discussing the matter. Lu Qinzhou looked at him and whispered, I know. You better know. The atmosphere rarely relaxed a little. But this relaxation did not last long. Zhou Jibai hurried in. Mr. Lu, Mr. Shen, something happened. He placed the tablet on the table. On the screen was a piece of news that had just broken out. The former vice chairman of Shen Group, Shen Mingyuan, is suspected of committing suicide out of fear of crime and is currently being rescued. Shen Yuan stood up suddenly. Suicide? Zhou Jibai looked solemn. On the surface it was suicide, but the timing was too coincidental. Shen Yuan looked toward Lu Qinzhou. They both thought of the same person almost at the same time. Lu Wenchuan. Shen Yu'an knows too much. Someone wants to be silenced. Shen Yu'an picked up his coat, his voice heavy with coldness. Go to the hospital. Lu Chenzhou also stood up. I'll accompany you. This time, Shen Yu'an didn't take no for an answer. The hospital corridors smell of disinfectant. Shen Yu'an was sent to the rescue room, and Shen Xingtang stood outside the door, his face pale. Seeing Shen Yu'an, she seemed to have finally found support, but she forced herself to stand upright. It's not suicide. This was her first sentence. Shen Yu'an walked up to her. Did you see it? Although my dad is afraid of death and selfish, he will not commit suicide at a time like this. Shen Xingtang's voice trembled. What's more, he only asked me to find a lawyer in the afternoon and said that he wanted to find another way to use the things in his hands. What? Shen Xingtang shook his head. I don't know. He only said that if anything happened to him, he asked me to go to the old house where he used to go to look for him. Shen Yuan's eyes darkened. The emergency room lights were still on. Lu Chenzhou was standing not far away answering the phone with a stern expression. A few minutes later, he came over. The ward monitoring of Shen Yu'an has been deleted. Shen Yu'an felt cold. Surveillance again. 7 minutes were missing from a car accident in a previous life. Something happened to Shen Yu'an in this life, and the ward monitoring was deleted. Same technique. The same people. Shen Yu'an looked at Shen Xingtang. Where is the old house? Shen Xingtang gave the address. Lu Chenzhou asked Zhou Jibai to arrange for people to go there immediately. Shen Yu'an said, I will go too. Lu Chenzhou frowned. What about the hospital? Xingtang is here. Shen Xingtang nodded. I'll guard it. Lu Chenzhou glanced at Shen Yu'an and did not stop him. Half an hour later, they arrived at an old house owned by Shen Yu'an. The house is located on the outskirts of the city, and almost no one comes here. People from Lu Chenzhou controlled the entrance and exit in advance and confirmed that it was temporarily safe. The place Shen Xingtang is talking about is an old safe in the study room. Shen Yu'an did not know the password. But he thought for a moment and entered Shen Xingtang's mother's birthday. There was a beeping sound. It's open. Shen Yu'an suddenly felt a little sad. People like Shen Yu'an may have had sincerity at one time. It's just that his sincerity is too small to offset his greed. There were several documents, a hard drive, and a photo in the safe. The photo was very old. In it were Shen Chongshan, Shen Yu'an, Lu Wenchuan, and another man. The background looks like a private business meeting. Shen Yu'an stared at the strange man in the photo and suddenly felt that he looked familiar. Lu Chenzhou reached out and picked up the photo, his eyes instantly turned cold. Liang Qixing's father. Qixing Capital. It turns out that this network started from the previous generation. Shen Yu'an opened the file. One of them is a memo handwritten by Shen Yu'an, recording the process of his cooperation with Qixing Capital to short Shen Group. At the bottom, there is a line of heavily circled names. Lu Wenchuan. Shen Yuan's heart beat rapidly. There may be more direct evidence on the hard drive. Zhou Jibai connects to the computer immediately. The hard drive was encrypted but was quickly opened by technicians. There is a video in it. The file name is September 17th, backup. Shen Yu'an saw this date, his breath suddenly stopped. September 17th. The night before a car accident in a previous life. The video opens. The picture is of a private room in a private club. Gu Yanci, Shen Yu'an, Liang Qixing, and a man sitting in the shadows. The man didn't show his face, but Shen Yu'an recognized the voice. Lu Wenchuan. In the video, Gu Yanci said, Shen Yu'an already believes in me. As long as Shen Group transfers the last amount of funds, he will have no retreat. Shen Yu'an asked, what happens after that? Lu Wenchuan in the shadow slowly spoke. After that, he will never be able to speak again. Shen Yuan's blood seemed to freeze at that moment. This is not simply causing the Shen family to go bankrupt. From the beginning, they were prepared to take his life. Lu Chenzhou slammed the computer shut. Shen Yu'an looked up at him. Lu Chenzhou's eyes were filled with murderous intent, but his voice was kept low. Stop looking. Shen Yu'an reached out and held the computer down. I want to see it. Shen Yu'an. I want to know how they killed me. The room was eerily quiet. Lu Chenzhou looked at his pale face and finally did not stop him. The video continues to play. Gu Yanci was silent for a long time and asked, "Must we do this?" Lu Wenchuan chuckled. Are you soft-hearted? Gu Yanci did not answer. But Shen Yu'an said, you can't keep it. If he is alive, the things Shen Chongshan left behind may be dug out. Shen Yu'an suddenly smiled. His eyes were red from laughing. I see. In his previous life, he thought he died in an accident. In fact, his death had already been decided lightly in this box. Lu Chenzhou reached out and held his shoulder. Shen Yu'an did not push away. He just looked at the screen and his voice was as light as a knife. This evidence is enough to make sure they never sleep peacefully again. Shen Yu'an is not dead. After 5 hours of resuscitation, he was pulled back from the gate of hell. But his first words when he woke up were not to call Shen Qingtang, nor to defend himself. He said, Lu Wenchuan wants to kill me. Shen Qingtang recorded this sentence. At this point, all the scattered threads in the first season finally converged into a clear direction in front of Shen Yu'an. The Shen family's bankruptcy was not an accident. The car accident in his previous life was not an accident. Shen Yu'an is the mole, Gu Yanci is the pusher, Xixing Capital is the knife, and Lu Wenchuan is one of the people holding the knife. Early the next morning, Shen Yu'an was sitting in the Lu family's study, looking at the hard drive backup on the table, and the whole person was unusually quiet. When Lu Chenzhou opened the door and came in, he had not slept all night. Shen Yu'an. Shen Yu'an didn't look up. Lu Chenzhou stepped closer and draped a coat over his shoulders. This time, Shen Yu'an didn't hide. He just asked in a low voice, when you saw me in the previous life, was I still alive? Lu Chenzhou's fingers froze. After a long time, he answered, alive. Shen Yu'an closed his eyes. Then did I say anything? Lu Chenzhou was silent. Shen Yu'an looked up at him. I want to know. There was deep pain in Lu Chenzhou's eyes. You called Gu Yanci's name. Shen Yu'an was stunned. He thought he would hate it and find it ironic. But when you really hear it, there is only emptiness. From his previous life to his death, he was still waiting for the person who harmed him. How ridiculous. Then what? Lu Chenzhou's voice was low and hoarse. I'm telling you, he's not coming. Shen Yu'an's heart ached. You are cruel. Yeah. Was I sad at that time? Lu Chenzhou looked at him, his Adam's apple rolled. You cried. Shen Yu'an laughed. His eyes slowly turned red. What a shame. Lu Chenzhou squatted down and was eye level with him. No shame. Shen Yu'an looked at him. This was the first time Lu Chenzhou had used such a gesture in front of him. Not a lofty and powerful person, not a calm and almost ruthless capital trader, but a person who once held him in a rainy night but failed to save him. Lu Chenzhou. Shen Yu'an asked, why are you so sad? Lu Chenzhou's eyes trembled. Shen Yu'an said softly, at that time, I probably didn't deserve what you did. It's worth it. Lu Chenzhou answered quickly. It was so fast that this answer had been repeated in his mind countless times. Shen Yu'an, you are always worth it. Shen Yu'an was stunned. Lu Chenzhou raised his hand, but did not touch him. It only stopped in midair. I am not qualified to ask you to believe me, nor am I qualified to ask you to forgive me for hiding it. But I can tell you that I was late in my previous life, but not in this life. Shen Yu'an looked at him, and the crack in his heart that had been opened by betrayal and death felt as if it had been lightly touched by something warm. It will not heal immediately. But at least the cold wind is no longer the only thing pouring in. The phone vibrated to break the silence. It's Lin Ji Yue. Yuan, something happened over at the Gu family. Shen Yu'an pressed to answer. Lin Jiue spoke very quickly. Gu Yanci is planning to hold a press conference, saying that he will disclose the evidence of your contractual marriage with Lu Chenzhou. He may have a copy of the agreement in his possession. Shen Yuan's eyes turned cold. Only a handful of people have a copy of a prenuptial agreement. The fact that Gu Yanci could get it meant there were still loopholes around them. Lu Chenzhou stood up with a cold voice. I'll handle it. Shen Yu'an also stood up. No. He put the hard drive into the safe, and the last bit of vulnerability in his eyes was suppressed, replaced by a clear edge. I'll do it this time. Lu Chenzhou looked at him. Shen Yu'an turned around, and when he passed by him, he whispered, Lu Chenzhou, get ready. What are you preparing for? Shen Yu'an turned back with a sneer on his lips. Doesn't Gu Yanci want to prove that our marriage is fake? Then let him see with his own eyes how real we are. In the afternoon of that day, Gu Yanci held a press conference. With a neat suit and a haggard face, he said to the camera, I can't bear to see Shen Yu'an continue to be trapped in a profit marriage. Today, I will reveal the truth. All the cameras were focused on him. Just when he was about to take out a copy of the agreement, the door to the venue suddenly opened. Shen Yu'an and Lu Chenzhou walked in side by side. Shen Yu'an was wearing a black suit, and the ring on his ring finger was clearly visible. He stood in front of all the cameras, looking calm. Gu Yanci's expression suddenly changed. Yuan? Shen Yu'an didn't look at him. He walked to the stage, faced the reporters, and spoke quietly. Mr. Gu said that the truth should be disclosed. That's just right. He pulled out another document. I also have some truths that I would like you all to listen to. The screen lights up. The box video was cut out of the part involving the time paradox of the past life, leaving only the content of Gu Yanci, Shen Yu'an and Qixing Capital conspiring to transfer Shen Group's funds. The voice of Gu Yanci sounded clearly. Shen Yu'an already believes in me. As long as Shen Group transfers the last amount of funds, he will have no way out. The whole place was in an uproar. Gu Yanci looked pale. Shen Yu'an finally looked at him. In his previous life, he had cried in front of this man and begged for an explanation. In this life, he doesn't need it anymore. He only said calmly, Gu Yanci, do you still want me to believe you this time? The press conference was completely out of control. Gu Yanci was escorted out of the venue, and the stock price of the Gu family plummeted that day. Shen Group officially shifted from a simple financial crisis to a criminal and business conspiracy investigation due to the disclosure of evidence. At night, Shen Yu'an stood on the terrace of the Lu family, looking at the city lights in the distance. He won the first battle. But the real enemy is still deep inside. Lu Chenzhou walked up to him. The two stood in silence for a long time. Shen Yu'an suddenly said, You were there in the past life. Lu Chenzhou looked sideways at him. Shen Yu'an didn't look at him, just looked at the night. Don't be absent this time either. Lu Chenzhou whispered, No. Shen Yu'an reached out and lightly touched the ring on his ring finger. This marriage started as a transaction. But at this moment, he suddenly knew that he could no longer just regard it as a transaction.